Kang the Conqueror is perhaps one of the most formidable foes in the Marvel Universe, despite being nothing more than a regular human, albeit one with an incredible intellect and access to highly advanced technology. His arrival has been long awaited by avid Marvel fans for years now, due in no small part to his reputation on the pages of the Marvel Comics. He is an interdimensional time-traveling tyrant, but at his core, he is a man with a thirst for conquest, who uses his mind as his greatest tool to create and harness extraordinary powerful weapons and gadgets from across the timeline. In the comics, Kang the Conqueror was born Nathaniel Richards, a distant descendant of Reed Richards from whom he inherited his incredible mind. Otherwise known as Mr. Fantastic, Reed Richards is one of, if not the greatest mind that the Marvel Pantheon has to offer. But is it possible that the MCU puts a spin on this story in order to connect Kang with the godfather of the MCU himself? Is it possible that Kang in the MCU will not be a Richards, but will in fact be a descendant of Tony Stark? Stick with us today, watchers of the Marvel Multiverse, as we discuss the popular theory that Kang the Conqueror is actually a descendant of Tony Stark, and explore the benefits and pitfalls that this would have on the greater MCU as a whole going forward. First off, let's explore the benefits of reimagining Kang the Conqueror to be a Stark. We know that the MCU is not shy about altering comic origins in order to make for a more compelling story, and oftentimes this means that Tony Stark's reach in the MCU is lengthened to be even more impactful than his comic counterpart. Ultron, for example, was originally a creation of Hank Pym, a detail that was reimagined in Age of Ultron. Instead, Ultron was a creation of the hybrid minds of Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. Mysterio in the comics was a disgruntled failed VFX artist who used his special effects experience to wreak havoc on Spider-Man's life. In the MCU, however, he was a disgruntled former Stark Industries employee who helped design and create revolutionary holographic illusion technology. Tony Stark has been responsible for the villainy of Aldrich Killian, Anton Vanko, and Adrian Toomes, and while many have criticized this trope for being overused, it is meant to serve as a reminder of Tony Stark's previous disregard for human life, back during his weapon building days. These types of foes continually resurface in order to highlight the weight of Tony Stark's arrogant ways and irresponsibility before his career as Iron Man, allowing him to confront his past and grow into a better hero. So is it possible that even after his demise at the end of Avengers Endgame, he is responsible for the next overarching villain of the multiversal saga? If Kang the Conqueror is a descendant of Tony Stark rather than Reed Richards, it could explain his affinity for gadgetry and his ability to create incredible weapons and tools. And if he inherits the mind of Tony Stark, this could explain his engineering prowess and technologically centric mind. Kang's most often used piece of equipment is his battlesuit, which contains a vast array of deadly weaponry and interdimensional tools that he collects and creates throughout his conquests. So is it possible that Stark Industries laid the foundation for building a battlesuit of this nature, in that Kang's suit of armor is actually based on a very old armor design worn by his ancestor? This could mean that the technology that Kang uses in his intertemporal conquests is actually based on Stark Industries technology and the science behind the Iron Man suits, which have been reimagined and reconstructed to incorporate the vast technological capabilities of the 31st century. If this is the case, Kang would effectively be using a 31st century reconstruction of the Iron Man suits in order to embark on his crusade to conquer as many timelines as he can reach. But now that we've talked about the benefits of changing up Kang's story, let's address the benefits of remaining comic accurate and what the upside to Kang being related to Reed Richards could be. The first and most obvious downside to making Kang a Stark is that Tony Stark is unable to confront his demons once again, and this is liable to taint his reputation as a hero and soil much of his redemption arc. With the Fantastic Four reboot on the horizon, it is not out of the question to believe that Kang will still be a descendant of Reed Richards, seeing as Reed is set to make his MCU debut at the end of Phase 4. If Kang is the next overarching villain, then it is very likely that Reed and the Fantastic Four will come into direct conflict with Kang in the coming years. And for a multitude of reasons, it would make sense to let Kang remain a descendant of Reed, seeing as it would serve their conflict more personally, and likely lead Reed into inner conflict upon learning that he is ultimately responsible for Kang's existence. Reed could be subject to intense emotional confusion that leads to an interesting character arc. allowing Reed to be a complex, three-dimensional figure with layers, and a character to lead the MCU going forward. This would also allow the legacy of Tony Stark to be centered around his transition into a true hero, and his journey would not be overshadowed by the idea that he was ultimately responsible for Kang and his conquests. Tony Stark could remain a hero, and his noble sacrifices would not be in vain, nor would it be undone by his corrupt lineage. If Reed Richards bears the brunt of this weight, knowing that Kang is his descendant, then this could allow the MCU to take a much more Fantastic Four-centric route going forward, honoring the Avengers by allowing the likes of Sam Wilson and Peter Parker to carry on the mantles of the franchise's forefathers, while allowing the universe to look ahead to the future. Tony Stark's legacy could be that he finally was able to grow into a hero in order to save the universe, and his story could come to a satisfying close. Meanwhile, Reed and the Fantastic Four could have a very personal connection to Kang, driving their motivations and ensuring that their character growth is engaging, while not overshadowing what came before them and what their universe was built on. But anyway, my friends, what do you prefer? Would you prefer to see Kang as a descendant of Tony Stark or Reed Richards, and why? If I may interject my opinion, I like the idea of Kang being a descendant of Reed Richards, and this being a major plot point moving forward. It's clear that Tony Stark is still very much influential in the MCU, with the announcement of Iron Wars as a Disney Plus show as well as Ironheart, and his mantle somewhat being carried on in the vein of Peter Parker. I think to tarnish his legacy would be a big mistake. This is just a very popular theory going around, and I wanted to address it here on the channel as I do think it's interesting. Anyway though guys, now I want to hear your thoughts. What do you prefer for Kang the Conqueror? Do you want him to have a connection with any of the MCU heroes at all? Or would you rather that he just be Kang? Again, thank you so much for watching the channel. Hit that subscribe button to assemble and join our team, and have a great day.